Today on the Diz List, we discuss the top 5 ride queues at Walt Disney World.
Welcome to the Diz List, the podcast that ranks everything in Walt Disney World. I'm Nick.
And I'm Rob, and welcome to episode 23, where we discuss the top 5 ride queues at Walt Disney World.
But before we get to the list, if you've been enjoying the show, please take the time to rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to share us with friends and family who you think would enjoy listening along. Help us grow so we can continue to bring you the content you've come to enjoy. Also, be sure to follow along on Twitter and Instagram at DizListPod. So, since we're talking about rides today and ride queues today, I was wondering, what's the longest Disney queue you've ever waited in?
The longest Disney queue I've ever waited in was Flight of Passage.
Okay, how long?
I'm going to say, because it's posted as minutes, but I just try to convert that to how many hours it was.
When you start measuring queues in hours, you know it's a long time.
Yeah, it's over 2. I think.
Wow.
This was right around the time Flight of Passage first opened because we couldn't get a fast pass for it.
Right.
So I want to say, and my wife would probably know better than I, but it was probably 2 hours, 20 minutes.
Wow.
It's a long time.
So that's the longest I've seen a queue that I actually was willing to stand. So Flight of Passage was listed at 150 minutes, actually, so 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And my son was like, we really have to bring Nana on this ride. And we got in the line, and it was listed at 150. It was not 150. It was maybe 80.
Oh, so good.
It was a good surprise. I think
They're trying to scare you off.
Well, I think what happened was it had shut down. And so, they're not really sure how quickly it's going to, go through the lines.
Right.
That particular ride, I feel, is oftentimes deceiving how long the queue is, only because they load so many people in each time.
It's a long one, too.
Yeah. Yep. My wife has an interesting Disney queue story.
Yeah, but is it... I know the story already. But it's a different type of queue.
Yeah. It's of the virtual sense, maybe? I don't know.
Like Guardians of the Galaxy? Or way worse?
Way worse. So, in 2021, when we were going to Disney World, it happened to come out that, hey, the last day you're there is going to be the first day of Boo Bash. And so my wife decided we should go to Boo Bash.
Which is awesome. I'd love to do that. They changed it back. What's it?
Yeah.
Mickey's Not So Scary?
Correct, which I would love to do.
Boo Bash, the difference is what before you get to the story?
So it was their answer to not being able to do stage shows, not being able to do parades in the true sense. So they did cavalcades, and they didn't have a special fireworks show. It's basically less of a party, more of an after-hours experience.
So you don't have to say the exact price that you paid. You can if you want to, but I'm not putting you on the spot here.
It varies. If
So give me like the difference, because this is your specialty here. What's the difference in price between the Boo Bash and Mickey's Not So Scary?
Oh, man.
Is it like a $50 more, less?
It actually, as I recall, Boo Bash was more than what they had been charging for.
Really?
Mickey's Not So Scary, because people were complaining that they're charging me more for less.
Sure.
And Disney's answer was, well, it's less. There are less tickets, and I don't know if that's the case. I
It's
have
more
no idea.
exclusive.
Supposedly.
Whatever.
Either way, my wife called when the phone lines opened, and was on hold for not 1, not 2.
2 hours and 20 minutes?
Not 2 hours and 20, not 3 hours.
More?
12 hours. 12.
Now that's a queue.
And wait for it. The only reason she was out of the queue was because their workday ended and she hadn't even gotten through yet.
Oh my Lord.
So the phone just ended. She called from work, left it on speakerphone really quiet, listened to the stupid loop music for 12 hours.
Oh my God.
I was like, hang that. She got home and I'm like, what are we? And then she's like, "Oh, I guess they're not getting to me. Their workday ended." So the next day, I can't remember exactly how it went down, but because I was convinced that we weren't getting tickets at that point, because it was opening day, and you've got all the influencer tickets and all that stuff. And then I can't remember how she got through so quickly the next day, but it was not as big of a headache the next day. And I don't know if it was because she called through member services with DVC, because a lot of times that's a lot quicker.
Right.
Or perhaps it was that she called with member services because it was a DVC only pre-sale. I can't remember. Either way, 12 hours.
Man.
That's dedication.
Did she at least take a screenshot so that if you needed to call back and said, "Hey, I put in my time"?
Yeah, she did have a couple screenshots. I don't know if she still has them or if she posted them on Instagram. But yeah, it was. I could not believe when she was like, "Yeah, I'm still on hold." I was like, "Wait, aren't you on your way home from work? Didn't you start this at like 9 a.m.?" So I think it was like 12. It ended up being like 12 hours and 20 minutes or something.
Man,
I can't even imagine.
she had to keep her phone plugged in all day, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I mean, that's dedication. So
wow.
Thank you to my wife, because Boo Bash was awesome, but I can't even fathom waiting online for that.
I remember when you did that, we were home. Obviously, we're very excited, and we went on to, I think it was Resort TV 1, I think the one we were watching.
I can't remember which one, but you're like, "I see you."
Yeah, so I was like texting Nick. My wife and I are sitting like watching it live for the opening, and like Nick would text me where he was. "Okay, I'm right by Casey's Corner by the pole." Oh no, not Casey's Corner, opposite corner.
Plaza.
Yep, and he's like, "I'm right by the flagpole, or not the flagpole,
The light pole.
Man,
on the corner.
I'm goofing it all up now, but. So then I would text him and say, "I see you, I see you."
Yeah.
Oh, it was cool.
Yeah.
It was cool.
It was full of influencers that night. Saw a whole bunch of people. Saw Nate from Paging Mr. Morrow.
Yep.
Resort TV 1 was there. I think Tim Tracker was there at some point. Didn't see him.
You'll run into him eventually.
Yeah,
I'm shocked we've run into him twice.
It was a really good party, or after hours. But I want to do a party. I want to do the Christmas party personally, but that's me.
Well, we didn't do the official Christmas party, but we did. Well, we'll get more into Christmas stuff in the next couple weeks. I'll tell you about my Christmas experience.
You did the Epcot stuff though.
That was cool.
Festival holidays.
We'll when we do our holiday episode, I'll go into more depth with what that was like.
Cool, awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
All right.
So, who do we have for the halftime show today?
Buffalo's own Goo Goo Dolls.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is they going to play that song where they just play a G chord through the entire... No, I'm just joking.
Is that like every song they ever did?
No, you know what's funny about the Goo Goo Dolls, though, is they started off as a Buffalo hardcore band.
Really?
Yes. True story.
Back in 1986 they started.
They played with, oh my gosh, all the different Buffalo hardcore bands that you expect, and different bands Scott Vogel's been in, and so they were... And then they first signed on Metal Blade Records, which is the same record label that Metallica used to be on. And then
Rob's doing the hardcore metal deep dive here from Buffalo.
And then they changed their style and went pop. And hey, whatever. They write great songs as a metal band. They write great songs as a pop band, and they blew up and well deserved.
All right.
I sat at a bar next to the bass player one time, and it was like you just look over and oh, there he is. I forgot what his name might be Robbie actually.
We'll find out. I'll find out after.
Anyway,
we'll ask
so
him
let's ask them. So maybe when they come off stage, we'll ask them. Maybe they'll say "Go Bills" with us.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, all right. We'll see you in a minute. Go Bills.
Go Bills.
So, in order to get our podcast started, we needed some way to get it out for everybody to hear. So, what we decided to do was go online and look around and try to find someone who can distribute our podcast to all the main services for us. We did a little research and we found that the best one was Anchor. Now, Anchor's a Spotify company, and Spotify is something that I use every day, but it also goes to other platforms. It's an easy way to make a podcast, and everything is right there in the app. So, for example, Anchor has tools that you can record, edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. If you don't have any professional editing software, you can do it right there on your phone. When you host your podcast on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on all the different listening platforms. I do Spotify, but you can also do Apple Podcasts and many more. Okay, students, let's review. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. If you don't have all the equipment and all the computer editing software, you can do it right on your phone. And the best part is, it's free, like free, which is great for sure. Go and download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Go for it.
Welcome back. How about that rendition of Iris?
Oh, wow. You even remembered the song title.
Yeah. Robbie Takic is his
Oh,
name.
you look... Okay, good. You asked him?
Yeah, I asked him.
Okay.
It is Robbie.
Did he remember sitting next to me at the Continental Bar in Buffalo?
Yes.
Okay.
He said, oh, that bald guy that plays in all those bands.
I had a little bit of hair then, actually.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was wearing a hat. Probably a Bills hat or a Sabres. Could be Sabres at that time.
Oh, that fair-skinned kid with a really bad sunburn.
There you go. That was probably it. Yeah, because that was around the time the Sabres were in power in the NHL.
Wow, that's a while ago.
When I lived in Buffalo, yeah.
No goal.
Yeah, well, that was it. I lived there during no goal.
That's crazy.
Oh my gosh, anyway, not a sports podcast, folks, but we love our sports.
That's right.
A couple questions I want to ask you before we begin.
Yeah.
The first one is, what's a Q? People listening are like, are we talking about letters of the alphabet here, or is this a British term for a line?
You know, it's hilarious to me. I would never have said the word Q. Mm-hmm. And then you become a Disney person.
Or a Netflix person.
Yeah. And you're no longer online. Mm-hmm. You are now on Q.
That's right.
Or not. You're not in line. You are on Q, which is so weird to me, right?
It is. It is strange.
How long have you standed on Q? Why is a quintessentially American company borrowing British slang or language anyway for being in line?
I do not know.
Right. I honestly, like, if we went to Six Flags, oh, you're standing in line. You go
Yeah.
to Disney. Oh, what's the queue like today?
Right.
What do you mean the queue?
What do they use at Universal?
I don't know.
Huh. Interesting. If you're listening, shoot us a message. Let us know.
I mean, it's weird that we call them queues, right?
Yeah.
It
It seems normal now.
Yeah, absolutely does.
When did that change? That changed around... I seriously think when Netflix rose to power, line and list became queue. Right?
No, because, like, you've always had, like, you could adjust your queue of, like, what plays next.
Yeah, that's true.
That's not different. Because you wouldn't say, I put this song in line to play.
Put it this way. Do 8-year-olds use that term?
I mean, my 8-year-old, or former, soon-to-be 8-year-old, will. But that's only because she goes to Disney.
Oh, okay. So she doesn't know it part of her normal vernacular.
No.
It's part of her Disney vernacular.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's a queue? It's a line at Disney.
Right.
What?
You ask another classmate of hers, they'll go, it's a letter.
Yeah.
Which is not a stupid response. It's...
But I do think we need to define it a little bit better, because I know that I wrote my list one way, and I could have written it another way, because I personally wrote my list not including pre-shows, but you could have written your list including pre-shows.
Yeah, some of them, yeah.
So for me, just so we're clear, I did not consider pre-shows as part of the queue.
Right, which means we probably won't overlap, which is absolutely fine.
And Rob did consider them.
I feel like you knew that.
I did not know that, but I knew that that was a possibility.
Yeah.
And I said to my son before I left, I said, I bet you, Mr. Rob, I bet you Mr. Rob is thinking one thing, and I'm not. So I think we're going to be good. It'll be a long episode today.
Yeah, that's okay, though.
That's okay. All right. So you want to get going?
Yeah, my second quick question is, do you think you've spent more time on an average Disney day sitting in a restaurant or standing in a queue?
So this, because I'm a table service person,
that's why I figured it was a good question for you.
Easy answer for me. Between the fact that I'm a table service person and we are pretty good users of Genie Plus, and also using touring plans, like we have the touring plans app, Lines app, I feel like we spend more time sitting down, relaxing in a restaurant.
See, I figured that might be true.
Not because I'm spending a lot of time in the restaurant, but because we are pretty darn good at avoiding long lines.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good thing.
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I was curious. I thought of that this morning. I was like, I bet you spend more time at tables. Now, we're the opposite, only because we're quick service people. We're in and out and bang, back
yeah,
to
but
the next ride.
you're not in line for 4 hours. You're probably in line 2.5, 3 hours a day.
Yeah,
Like,
but
that's
we're not sitting at a table for that
No,
amount of time.
I understand that. But when you add up, if you take 2 quick service meals and 1 table service meal, you've got, 2.5, 3 hours
Yeah.
of sitting down. So, yeah,
All right,
cool.
on to the list. So, best ride queues. My number 5 best ride queue, maybe this is on your list. I mean, like I always say, we don't go over this ahead of time. My number 5 is based in a world that is very special to me from my youth. And this is a queue that I very much enjoy. And the last time that we went to Hollywood Studios and I waited in this queue, we basically just raced through it. But it's such a great experience for me because it takes me back to Return of the Jedi. And I feel like I am standing on Endor, even though it's mega hot. Maybe it gets hot on Endor, we don't know. But standing in my number 5, Star Tours.
That's a
queue,
good cue.
I love it because I'm a big Star Wars guy. So
It
are
is
you.
not on my list, but that is a good cue.
And I thought hard about this. Like, okay, what experience do I like to have when I'm in the queue? And even though it's hot, and sometimes you're in the sun, sometimes you aren't. I took that into account for most of these too. That I am on Endor and I'm looking up and I see the AT-AT.
Oh my God, that's so
It's
cool. You walk,
amazing.
and sometimes it sprays you with
It
water.
does. And then
Oh,
you
like
get
mist.
inside, and then you feel like you're in a rebel base. You get to see 3PO. You get to see R2 in the inside. That, to me, is like, it's immersive in the movies. And the funny thing is, they have similar things over in Galaxy's Edge, but this brings me specifically into the movie that I love, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, the only thing that would be better is if like they had actual Ewoks walking around.
That would be cool, too. That would be really cool.
That's a really good cue, honestly, and I
Yeah.
can't argue with that at all.
With the line being so short and it being not as a popular of a ride, which is weird because they're constantly updating the ride movie to match whatever movie is out in the theaters for Star Wars, so it's always updated. But it's one of my favorites.
Unpopular opinion, but ride-wise, I prefer this ride to Smuggler's Run.
No, I do too.
Smuggler's Run is so stressful for me.
Yeah, we struggled through that.
Yeah.
And I've said this story on the podcast before. Like, I was like, all right, I did pretty good this time.
Yeah.
No, I did not. But like, imagine what I did the previous time.
Yeah.
You weren't with me when.
Yeah.
Anywho, yeah, my number 5 is the Star Tours queue at Hollywood Studios.
That's a great
lot of
one.
fun.
So my number 5 is actually also going to be leaning heavily onto nostalgia, and it's also in Hollywood Studios,
Okay.
and it's Toy Story Mania.
Oh, I thought about that one. Yeah.
Because walking through that queue with my kids and pointing out, hey, you know what that is? Do you know what that is? Do you know what?
I played that when I was a kid. You know that game?
Yeah.
No, Dad.
Yeah, like the like Battleship and Tinker Toys, and then when it's working, the Potato Head animatronic.
Yeah.
When it's working, sometimes it's not. I love walking through that queue. It does a great job of making you feel like you're toy sized. You've got those massive crayons against the wall. You're in a fort that you can remember that you would feel like you built for your own toys.
Yeah.
Right. You've taken all your old boxes to your games and stacked them up and put them so that they're a fort for your action figures, and you are now that living action figure within this area. I love the ride anyway, but like that particular queue for me takes me back. I can't help but smile going through there. And it's one of those rides that I know for a fact my kids are at some point going to get really annoyed with me saying, hey, look at that. I used to play with that. And they're going to be like, yeah, you told us the last 18 times. Like, we could ride it 4 times in a row. I'm still going to point those things out.
Yep.
Every time I'm in there, I find a different toy.
Yeah.
Or a different game.
That you don't remember from last time.
Yeah, I love it. It is a nostalgia piece for me, and so that's my number 5.
Now, a lot of how I built my list, it depends on the one individually, but a good chunk of it is inside and air conditioned.
Yeah, that's a big thing there on that one.
That's a huge part of my list moving forward too, is that, do I want to be standing and baking in the sun? Part of it is, part of it, even when you're outdoors, you're semi-shaded. They have that tall bamboo that sort of looks like grass. But then, what do you think? Maybe 3/4 of the queue is
Probably.
over cover and air conditioned?
Yeah, with the cutbacks and everything else, switchbacks.
Yeah.
I will add that I don't actually ever, as much as I complain about Hollywood studios and needing more places for air conditioning, I don't often think about this one being the one that has the air conditioning, only because of the time of day that I ride this ride. I almost always
Ride it
am
in the
going
morning.
over there in the morning.
Yep.
And hit this one up early.
Yeah, we did. That was the first or second ride we did.
I
Maybe
think it was
the first
I think
one.
it was our first one.
Yeah,
we
it
road
was.
dropped it because we had a Genie Plus or Lightning Lane for Slinky.
Slinky, yeah.
So we didn't need to run to that.
Well, good choice, and it actually transitions really well into my number 4. And my number 4 is also a queue that shrinks you down.
Oh,
Yeah. So, which is now I'll explain. I love this queue and I hate it at the same time. So that's why it's at number 4. Could be higher on my list, and that is Ratatouille.
yeah. Can I just?
Yeah.
I think the reason you hate it is because it's a 50-50.
Yes, exactly right.
Half the
Half
queue
is
is like whatever. We're not even
Outside,
gonna think about it.
No, outside ropes. It's the worst. The first half of that queue is awful.
Might be
Outdoors,
one of the worst.
hot, horrible.
Yeah.
But the second half is so good. Like you go from torture to just this immersive, amazing experience. As soon as you get inside, it feels like it's nighttime in Paris. It's nice and cool. And as you walk through the queue, it makes you feel like you're shrinking down. And you even go into this little art studio. It's super cute. Anyway, I don't want to give all of it away here, but Ratatouille is just such a fun queue. I really enjoy it, but that first half, I hate it. Could it be higher on my list? Yeah. I even thought about, well, I'll take it off the list completely because that first half of it is god awful. But the second half is so good. And the sign, the Gusteau's sign, they say it in French and English. Very, very cool. I don't know if this made your list or not. I guess we'll find out. But do you have any comments on this one?
It didn't make my list. It made my honorable mention. I did write it down as an honorable. It's number 6 for me, probably. Maybe number 7. The reason it didn't is because the fact that I feel like the Imagineers, I don't know if they didn't think it was going to be popular, and so they didn't build big enough of a indoor queue, or if they had size restraints. But that queue for a new ride, when you know that a new ride coming in is going to have a decent amount of people wanting to be on it,
Yeah.
I feel like they didn't use enough real estate for the queue. And so as a result, you're outside a lot. And it is what it is. I guess this time of year, it probably feels like that queue's too big because wait times are really low. And, the week after Thanksgiving is notoriously dead. But yeah.
We rode it twice. One time it was at the crack of dawn. It was around 7 o'clock or maybe 8 in the morning.
We rope dropped with the early park entry.
And we didn't have to wait very long. But the second time was right after we watched Harmonious. And it was at night, but it was so hot at night. It was 90 degrees at, whatever time it got over, 9:20 or whatever.
Well, everything is stone right there, right? Yeah. So it just absorbs all that heat. And then when the sun goes down, it's still giving off that heat.
It was hot.
In hindsight, I don't think that would not be my extra hours strategy at Epcot.
I think we learned the hard way.
But it was still, that ride is amazing. And that queue, I agree with you. That's why it's on my honorable mention. So I like it too.
It's one of my favorites. What do you have for 4?
So my number 4 is in the same park, in the same part of the park.
Oh,
Frozen Ever After.
there you go.
Okay. I think, so for me, is it amazing because I love Frozen? No. But my daughter loves Frozen. And to a certain extent, my son grew up with Frozen as well. It does a very good job of bringing some of the side characters in as you're going through. You've got Oaken's Tokens. You walk through Kristoff's shop. It feels like you're walking through Arendelle, even when you get into the main room there.
And it's air conditioned. It's called Frozen.
I was going to say, and it's air conditioned. I think that it's a really good ride, or a really good ride queue, in that it really is themed well to the characters in the movie, and they don't just rely on Anna and Elsa. Having the sauna and Oaken's face pop up on the sauna door is pretty cool.
It is very cool.
So I rode it once back when Fast Pass was still a thing. You went through the Fast Pass line, and you kind of bypass that before you get to the switch. And I'll be honest with you, I would rather rope drop it and try to make sure I get through that entire queue rather than go and do the Fast Pass and bypass all that stuff, or the Lightning Lane and bypass that stuff. I think it's a really good queue for young kids who maybe they don't need to be so much entertained, like along the lines of like a Winnie the Pooh where they get the honey wall and stuff.
Yeah, right.
But where they can pick things out, because even if there's a line where it's kind of standstill at moments, you can have your kids pick things out in the room. You know, like, oh, what's that from? You remember that in the movie? And there's little props like in Kristoff's shop, because he's the royal ice provider or whatever he is there.
Well, it's interesting because now that you're saying this, I'm picking out quite a few rides. I would say when you go into the Mexico Pavilion, it's night. When you go into Frozen to wait in that queue, it's night. When you walk into Ratatouille for that queue, it's night. It's kind of interesting that you're indoors, you're in this air-conditioned, and I guess my point I'm trying to make here is I think Epcot and Disney in general does a good job of bringing you into that immersive experience, because it's even changing the time of day for you.
So they make
it's kind of cool.
So you're thinking that's kind of cool, and I'll bet you Disney executives are thinking, I don't have to pay a light bill.
Yeah, sure.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
Because it is very immersive. Yeah, that's my number 4. I love that queue. I think it's a great queue.
That's a great choice. My number 3 is one that I don't even know if you're even going to put on your list. I tried to, when I created this list, I went through every single ride. Okay, in my head, I went through all of them and just pictured what all the queues were, which ones meant the most and most enjoyable to me. Now, this one, although a lot of it is outside, okay, it is one of the most fun and enjoyable and exciting queues, and that one is It's Tough to Be a Bug. Because you're standing outside the Tree of Life, and as you're walking around the Tree of Life, carved into this Tree of Life in Animal Kingdom are all of these hidden animals everywhere. I mean, there's probably hundreds of them. So as we're waiting in line for Tough to Be a Bug, you know, being an art person and everyone in my family having such an appreciation for that, what we do is we're looking around, identifying all the animals, appreciating the artisans and the sculptors. We absolutely love it. It's hot, I know, but we have so much fun looking around and identifying. And the line moves quick too, because it's a big show. Everybody piles in, and then you're waiting in line, and then you're kind of walking through. And anyway, I really, really enjoyed that queue, and I know it probably wouldn't be on a lot of people's lists, but for me, it's as high as number 3. I really enjoy it.
I would not have even thought of it. I really understand where you're coming from. I think there's ways to enjoy that the Tree of Life without having to be in that queue.
Yeah.
But I completely and totally forgot about how that kind of wraps around through. You know, you're as close to the Tree of Life as you're going to get. I mean, you're literally in it. And I think I was amazed when my first time going, because like you know they're there, and but like when you show up and you're like in that queue, you think, okay, well, they're going to be obvious animals, right? But there are things that like you might not see the first 3-4 times you're there.
Yeah, and that happened with us.
Whoa, wait a second. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
It is a pretty smart use of the Tree of Life, because from a distance you don't notice it, but up close you notice these little things. And it's a prime example of how Joe Rohde and the Imagineers that built that park thought of everything.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, except for Dinosaur Land.
I wonder if we'll see Joe Rohde back.
Wow. Could you imagine?
I don't know.
Wow.
As of time of recording, you never know.
Yeah.
We
Dude, this
last
yeah.
week. Was it last week or the week before? We were making comments
No, 2
about
weeks, yeah.
Bob Iger and Chapek, and then
2 weeks ago.
and then
night.
Sunday 10:15.
Yeah. So in a couple hours, we're going to find out that Joe Rohde's coming back.
Let's hope so.
Could you imagine?
Yeah.
We would have to record again.
breaking
We'd have
news.
to do another breaking news segment. That would be
Hey,
something else.
but I'd be happy to do that for news like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
He's,
yeah,
he's traveling right now if his Instagram is to be believed. So
yeah, I try to follow him too. He's an awesome guy. So my number 3, tough to be a bug. What do you have for 3?
So my number 3, I went back and forth on whether it should be lower. I think that I may have, I could have justified putting this below Frozen. So I'm going to say this is like 4B/3A, or whatever. And it's Seven Dwarfs.
Oh, okay.
So I understand that it's not necessarily the most immersive, right? You're not turning into a mouse or a rat.
Sure.
You're not turning into a toy. However, I feel like you're really walking into the mine with the dwarves. You have those barrels that the kids can twist and project stuff. Now that's obviously something that in 2022 you think about and you're like, there's a petri dish waiting to happen.
Yeah. Oh yeah. My kids went running to touch it, and my wife had to hold them back.
Yeah. It's changed, obviously, like when you think about, okay, well, we got to be more mindful of like how germs spread.
Yeah.
And so that part of it has changed. That said, I really like this queue. I don't think it's as hot as some of the others. I think part of that is that they have, like, those fans are really ripping in there.
Yep.
And so while it's not air conditioned per se, it feels rather cool in there. And I love the ride. I think it's a cool feel to the whole place. What are your thoughts?
If I'm remembering it right, and correct me if I'm wrong, I remember right before you go inside that you can refill your water bottle. I think there's like a drinking fountain there.
I believe there is, yes.
Right. I remember it being such like a great surprise and thinking,
So,
that's fantastic.
If any Disney execs listen to us,
Put a drinking fountain midway.
Can we get rid of the drinking fountains and please get
Water bottle filling
water
stations.
bottles? Yeah. I know there are some, but replace, like if schools can replace them,
Yeah.
Disney can. Please do it.
Yeah,
it's
much
so
better.
much better.
And then they can put, probably more industrial filters on them, and
Yeah, whatever. So it doesn't taste like sulfur.
yeah.
But I really like that queue. It does make me feel like I'm going into the mines to go working, and I am a sucker for queues where you can hear the people on the ride. So you're building you're building up excitement throughout when you hear the people whiz by you and they're screaming. It's partially why I don't like the queue so much, but I don't mind the experience of waiting for Toy Story or for Slinky Dog. Because you can hear everybody, like, they're flying over your head and you can hear them.
Everest is like that too. When you go to get on Everest, they come down the drop. Yeah.
So I'm a sucker for those kind of cues. So that's why I put this up there.
That's a good one. Good choice. That one is not on my list, but it's not even on my honorable mention. I didn't even think of that one for some reason.
It's
That's
not
a good choice.
It's not one that a lot of people probably think of as being a great cue, but
The only other thing I'll say about that one too, which can be positive or negative, when you get to the end, right before you get on the ride, I feel like the mines shrink.
yeah.
And I feel like I'm getting bigger.
Yeah.
Because I don't fit anymore. I don't know if you noticed that too, or maybe it's just me.
I don't want to call it a door, but that last turn you make to go in
is
to where they
small and
decide which row you're sitting in.
Yeah.
I do feel like that's definitely small, and like I can think of like our friend who just went there on his honeymoon. I could imagine him getting to that spot and be like, "Whoa, I'm claustrophobic right now. How do I fit in this?"
Yeah, he's a tall guy. All right, so my number 2 is, it's kind of funny because it's a queue without a queue, because you have to press a button even to get in the virtual queue for this specific ride. And my number 2 is brand new Guardians of the Galaxy. So when you when you join the virtual queue for this, obviously they give you a time and you come back, they scan your band and you go in. But if you haven't been on this ride yet, it's a pretty incredible ride. Not only that, but the whole experience is pretty fantastic. So when you walk in the main door, there is like this beautiful projection on the ceiling. You're in this giant round room, and there's all these little display cases with these mini models with ships. And then there's 2 other pre-shows, which I know we mentioned earlier that do we count the pre-shows, do you not? But it's still all part of the waiting process for me, so that's why I considered it. We've had this discussion before, and I don't remember if we landed on there's 2 pre-show videos or there were 3. Because the one has Glenn Close, the second, I think, has the Guardians, and that's the one where, yes, yeah. Okay, yeah, I don't want total spoilers here. I'm very bad
if you haven't ridden this ride's so new that I do feel it's one we have to like pump the brakes before we like.
Yes, I'm looking at Nick here in the room, and we don't give it all away.
I will be honest with you.
There's some cool surprises.
So I'm gonna be honest. This is not on my list, and I hate myself for not putting it on my list because I was like, well, I can't count it because of the pre-show. I can't count it because I'm not counting pre-shows. But then when you start describing that room, you walk into, I forgot
also a great part of the queue.
How amazing that part is.
And they have the little videos on the screen with the different characters. There's a lot to it.
But trust me when I say, if you don't, we purposely said we are not watching any ride-throughs of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the only spoiler I'll give you is always go to the right.
Yes.
When given a choice, when you enter a room, go to the right.
Yeah, hang out on the right-hand side. It makes life easier.
Yeah. But that said, it is like, I hate myself for not putting this on there.
It's a good one.
It's very
There's
good.
so many, and my honorable mention list is long too, because Disney does a good job with this because the amount of time that you spend, it's all part of the immersive experience and the money that you pay.
Yeah, it's a very good. You know, and I think that the virtual queue makes it tolerable too. I would be interested to find out after the virtual queue goes away, if it goes away, would you still be saying it's a good queue?
Yeah,
because
it may go down. Like Ratatouille is really good, but it's also half the time we're outside because that's probably what will happen with this ride.
Because I suspect that entire room that you're talking about with the projections and whatnot
is going to wrap.
It's going to turn into one big giant freaking switchback.
And so will the outside.
Yeah, and so it's going to be a pretty intense wait inside. But you're right. This is that room alone is good. And then you go around the corner and you've got the videos of the different Guardians up on the wall, and
with the display cases with the Nova Core and the ships. And,
it's pretty cool.
I can't remember the name of the planet. My son has them all memorized.
You start getting into it as you're walking up, and you've got. It's just a really cool.
It's my favorite ride right now.
Yeah,
that's my List #1 ride right now.
I dropped the ball on that. I didn't put it on my list.
It's all right.
Okay,
at least one of us remembered, and you have a bunch that I forgot too. So that's why this is a good thing that worked out this way. Yeah. So what do you have for 2 then?
So my number 2 is one that does exactly the opposite. I shouldn't say the opposite. It accomplishes what Remy's couldn't.
Okay.
In that its outdoor portion of the queue is as good, if not better, than its indoor portion.
Really?
And that is Flight of Passage.
Oh, yeah.
Waiting in line, waiting on queue.
Sure.
For Flight of Passage, walking underneath the floating islands, walking around those the foliage, the flora and fauna, if you will, the sound that's getting pumped in, the waterfall on the side of the mountain, the whole thing is just so immersive before you've even gotten inside. When you get inside, they've got the bioluminescence going on. Now, I haven't ridden this ride at night. And riding the ride at night isn't important, but being in that outside in that queue at night, I think would be so cool.
It is.
The bioluminescence inside is awesome. Animal Kingdom's probably the second hottest park.
Yeah.
And it's a long queue inside of air conditioning that will get you a break.
Well, the second half is. The first half we were kind of going through the mountains. I don't know. They must have some kind of air conditioning because it's like half open, but
It's kind of reminiscent of Mine Train in that it has a lot of very powerful fans.
I'm with you. I'll be honest. This is number 6 on my list. This is
Okay.
just slightly off
I
the
haven't
list,
even
and
gotten.
I love
yeah,
it too.
Yeah, I haven't even gotten to the room with like
Right.
the experiments going on. You've got, I mean, everything's so cool. You've got a life size. Is that life size? I don't even know. How would you know? Life size
It's-
avatar.
Yeah, it's
like
it's size accurate according
yeah.
to the way they, because they're, I think compared to like if a human average height is what 5. What's average human height? 5.5 feet maybe.
for females.
Yeah. And then for males, it's what? It's
Probably
5'10", 5'11".
Yeah.
And then I think for the Navi, they're what, 9 feet
Yeah,
tall?
yeah. I mean, it's massive.
That's
but
a
it's,
guess.
I think it, it could be a bit intense for some younger kids.
Yeah.
Because it looks like a living thing that's floating in a vat. So that can be a bit intense.
Yeah.
But my kids love the experimentation that's going on, like the little magnetic liquid that looks like it's reacting and that it's coming to life. It's really just playing with magnets. I mean, I know the physics and the science behind it, obviously, but it's not. For a kid, it's like magical. So I think it's a really great cue. I think where they drop the ball is when you're finally walking down that ramp.
Oh,
that
yeah.
ramp is like the most boring.
It is.
And it can be like
Flat
the most
concrete.
boring 10, 15 minutes of your life. You're just like waiting. And I don't ever feel, like I said at the top of the show, I don't feel like this line, like you wait forever. Because when they load, I mean, if you've been on the ride and you know what the ride is like, do yourself a favor and look around when that screen opens up, because it's Soarin' on crack.
Yeah, you look left, right,
I've
down.
Like, it's so many people.
It reminds me of when you first start the ride, like you're on the side of an apartment building in a big city, where you're looking out the balcony and you can see everyone else's balconies up and down. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, and this ride, honestly, reminds me why I'm irritated about the bent effect on Soarin'.
Right.
Because there's
Never.
there's a bajillion places you could be.
Yeah, and it's good no
and
matter
it's
where.
good no matter where.
Yep.
How come Soarin' can't have a straight Eiffel Tower?
I don't know.
Anyway, that cue is my number 2 at Walt Disney World.
Great choice.
Thank you.
My number 1 is a lot in common to the first one on my list, which was number 5. And my favorite one, now this does include pre-show, but I'm also including a couple other factors here. I'm including a good chunk of it is air conditioned inside, and the nostalgia factor. My number 1 is Star Wars Rise of the Resistance for multiple reasons. The first one is when I walk in, I feel like I'm in a rebel base and I'm walking through the corridor. And then I see that screen that all the rebels are standing around. It's green and it has like the circles and the grid on top of it.
Yep.
And then I get excited. I go, okay, I'm part of the Rebel Alliance here.
Yeah.
I'm part of this. Like I'm in it. I'm in it. And then you see Rey and BB-8, which is still, you're kind of waiting, and then you still walk around a little bit more. And I don't know how much further to elaborate. Are you going to continue on here? No, you're not going to continue on here. Okay. We talked a little bit beforehand, and I said, I don't think we're going to overlap very much. And he says, I think you're right. So then the further on you go, they have all these little animatronics built in. So this is a complicated one because it could be a debate between the two of us, but it's how we each interpret what a cue is. I'm including the cue as everything I'm doing before I literally get on to that moving trackless ride. That's where I am on this.
Hey, look, it's a very good wait for the ride. I don't slight that. It's a good cue. For me, it doesn't rise to the level.
Good one.
Pun intended. It does not rise to the level of a top 5 cue for me because I eliminated the pre-shows.
Sure.
Throw pre-shows in, and it's my number one.
Yeah.
If you include
I'm
the
including
entire,
that.
which
Yeah.
is why I think that it's
That's
interesting
part of
that we
my
did-
definition, yeah.
And I'm glad that we didn't discuss this beforehand because it's resulted in a very good discussion and
And a variety, too.
To be perfectly honest, this was a very hard list to come up with
It
because
is.
because of that. But like,
I have honorable mentions and I have dishonorable mentions.
yeah. So if I had considered pre-shows as part of the queue, this is number one on
Okay.
my list. I didn't, and
Sure.
so it's not because I think the wait up until then just isn't.
The screen I mentioned earlier, I mean, is amazing, but it wouldn't get you to number one with just that part of the
Right.
screen.
So for you, walking in and seeing all the stormtroopers is still part of the queue.
yeah.
And so that makes, I mean,
I know.
yeah,
I haven't even gotten there yet.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
Or
go ahead.
Well, it's okay. Again, like there's so much to talk about. I mean, I don't need to kind of reiterate what the whole ride is, but that whole experience up to getting on the ride for me is just, it's gold. That's my number one.
I've had the unfortunate experience before.
Of skipping it.
Yes.
Yeah, because of a malfunction? That was your
don't-
first time there.
No, it was when they first open sometimes, or when they just reopen. They want people to move faster, and they skip a whole bunch of the pre-show. Like the whole Ray section, I think, is a part of the thing that gets skipped.
You
just-
skipped Ray and
like, you just
BB-8?
walk right through the. It's
What part did you skip?
man,
The part where you go on the transport ship?
yes,
That part's awesome, too.
yeah. So it's just weird when they do that, but
Is there
it's a
another
great-
entrance, or do you walk right through the transport ship?
walk right through it?
Okay.
At least when I went, we did.
All right.
So yeah, that's not on my list. But do you have more to add about that?
No, and I don't know if our listeners have been on the ride before, and I'm always torn whether I want to describe everything that's happening or just kind of describe my feelings and what it means, because I don't. Again, I always get heat from my friends who I work with that I spoil everything, so I always have that little person standing over my shoulder saying, "Don't ruin it. Don't spoil it for everyone." So I'm not going to spoil too much of it, but again. I have loved Star Wars my entire life. I was born the November after Star Wars came out, and I've grown up with it. Still collect the vintage action figures. I just absolutely love Star Wars. So my number 5 and my number 1 are both going to be Star Wars. So what do you have for your number 1? Is it even on my list?
It is not.
Really?
And I really thought this is where you were going when you started talking about your number 1.
Oh.
Because of our experience together. And my number 1 best queue at Walt Disney World is also Star Wars, but it is Smuggler's Run.
Oh, okay.
Because Hondo,
Yeah, was awesome too.
name a better animatronic in a queue. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, the next thing you're going to mention is definitely...
And then,
Oh, yeah.
like, I just got goosebumps.
Yeah.
When you walk on to the Millennium Falcon and you are standing there where Chewie and Han stood, you're in the Millennium Falcon, and I mean, Rob and I are both kind of giddy right now talking about this.
I'm going to quickly look up the photo of the two of us while Nick's describing
So
it.
this is like it when you walk through. You've got the mechanic shop you're walking through that's got a whole bunch of cool stuff in it. It really is a Star Wars nerd's dream because even the old guard, if you will, of Star Wars fandom will love this because you have old Star Wars stuff, right? You've got Millennium Falcon. Rise is, truly the Disney Star Wars, right? So you've got Rise of the Resistance has your Kylo Ren, your Rey, and while Hondo isn't necessarily part of the old Star Wars stuff, that whole era, right? You're walking through to that queue. You've got like I said, you're like walking through like a shipyard, a shipbuilding area, and you got the mechanic shop, and you've got Hondo, and it's just so nostalgic for me. And I had not been on it, and then Rob was like, "Wait until you get on the Millennium."
Walking through the doorway and getting into the cockpit is like, whoa.
And there are pictures of us and our family with these stupid little kid smiles.
Yeah.
And our kids are smiling, but we're the ones with the stupid little kid smiles.
Yeah.
Because we're sitting down at the chess table. We are walking, oh my gosh, the blast doors. We're going to go through the blast doors. Oh my gosh. Like, we're going to go sit in the cockpit. I love that queue. And I get it that, like, for probably 75% of our listeners, they would not rank this as high as I am. And that's fine, because this is my list. And for me, just talking about it is making the hair on the back of my neck stand up because of how cool it was.
I am scrolling through my pictures from our trip. We have so many pictures that I'm not even close to where we are on the Hollywood Studios day at this point.
Yeah.
We're not even close. So my 2 cents on this is pretty much what Nick said. It's the same thing. It's not on my list, but not because I purposefully left it off, because mine is so Star Wars centric already to begin with. But being able to just sit at that table on the Millennium Falcon and get our picture taken, which I don't think we were supposed to do, but we pay enough money. I'm sitting down and getting my picture taken. So my wife was nice enough to do that for us. But man, it is cool. It is really cool. The ride itself and the whole video game part, not a huge fan of, but it's almost worth it just to be able to go into that iconic setting. So I agree, that's a great one for number one. So
I would replace the ride and make the whole thing one big giant restaurant.
Right.
And just let me sit in there and hang out and eat Star Wars themed food. Bring me the food from the Star Cruiser that you can't sell out anymore. Yeah. Because you've kind of, screwed that one up. But
that's a story for another episode, I guess.
Yeah. But all right. So you mentioned multiple times that you had honorable mentions and dishonorable mentions.
I do, and I don't want to spend too much time on these because I don't want to, I'm just going to list them quick and tell you reasons why I put them on for honorable mention. I had Flight of Passage. We discussed that already. Why? Mm-hmm. I had Expedition Everest.
Oh, my son was like, you can't forget Expedition Everest. And I was like,
I love the historical stuff inside.
Yeah.
I love the footprint.
Yeah, he loves it too.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
I love it really is kind of gives you that immersive experience with all like the Buddhist prayer flags everywhere, and that's a great one.
It also falls into that realm of like hearing people on the actual ride.
Yep.
I like that queue too. I'd already made my list. I wouldn't change it.
Another one is The Little Mermaid. When Scuttle is working, when Scuttle is working, it's fun to watch that animatronic talk. I enjoy getting on there and looking for the hidden Nautilus in the side. I like the way that the rocks are carved. Like, it's very artistic and very well made. Right. Not on my list. I think it's cool, though. For the same reason, I put Dumbo on there just for the fact that...
what?
Just let me explain. I like the fact that they give you the option for the kids to play. So for kids, not for me personally, it's an honorable mention for families, because when families go into Dumbo, you get like a beeper, and the kids get to go play on this playground.
All right, this is my moment like you had with me when I said mustard number one.
Yeah.
I can't believe you have this even anywhere near an honorable mention or anything. Now, it's not dishonorable mention because the queue is non-existent. Yeah.
Well, when you hear my dishonorable mentions, they're horrible for a reason. This is like, to me, it's innovation. I'm giving them bonus points. It's not on my list.
I guess they put...
I'm just giving them bonus points for innovating and creating a system where...
Finding a trap for people?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's my best. I'm giving them bonus points for creating something creative.
Yeah.
My last one. And as I was sort of analyzing all the queues, I looked at Epcot, and almost every ride in Epcot has an indoor air-conditioned queue. I'm not saying they're all the best, but if you think of the way the Epcot works, the majority of the pavilions are indoors, and you get to cool off while you're waiting. I mean, Spaceship Earth, you're outside for a chunk of it.
Yeah, Spaceship Earth doesn't even have a queue.
Yeah.
It's
all outside.
You're indoors, and then now you're on the ride.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Anyway, so that's a shout-out to Epcot just for, knowing you're in Orlando. And planning for that.
Yeah.
So the majority, like I said, is indoors, and you're baking outside. But so that's some honorable mentions for various reasons. So
my honorable mention list would start at Epcot with Test Track.
Oh, that's a good one. I didn't think of that.
for a
Creating the cars.
well, not even that, just the walking through and looking at the prototypes and stuff. I think they could do a better job. I've mentioned this before. I wish they would do an evolution of cars, and if you have Chevrolet sponsoring it, you could easily do an evolution of the Chevy vehicles.
I think that was part of World of Motion.
And so they could easily do something like that. I would like them to change up the cars that are in there, almost like a showroom style, and bring in actual like prototype cars that they've showed at I think it's SEMA, SEMA, I think is the
My dad talks about that.
But car guys, I think, would love Test Track. Another one that was really close to being on my list, and then I kind of was like, really, it's one room that's awesome, and that's Peter Pan.
Yeah, I
Peter
thought
Pan's
of that
Flight,
too. Yep.
Because you have
Another good one for kids.
yeah, it's really good for kids, and you've got that whole interactivity with like the shadows and stuff where you can.
Well, that's like Haunted Mansion when it's working with all those little interactive pieces. But a lot of times
Sometimes they're not working. Yeah.
And they'll rope it off where you avoid that whole part. So if people wondering why that's not on my list, it doesn't always work. So I don't even know if
I was actually shocked. I thought it was going to be on your list, but I can see why. Now,
I don't know.
I'm interested to hear about your dishonorable mentions.
Yeah. So I have a couple. One of my least favorite, and this is, I don't know if they've gotten much better by adding a couple umbrellas, but that is Slinky Dog is outside for the majority of it. And I mean, part of it at the end is undercover, but it's just so hot. I don't love the Slinky Dog queue at all. If you're going to go and ride Slinky, I would almost definitely pay the extra money just to skip and go right on it, because that's a rough queue to wait in.
You can't.
You can't anymore?
No, because it's the only one that's individual lightning lane there is Rise.
Oh, you're right.
Just got to wake up at 7 a.m. and play the slots.
Ugh. Anyway, that stinks. And then Jungle Cruise is torturously hot.
Oh, my God.
You're undercover, but like I feel like I sweat off 3 gallons of sweat while I'm waiting for that one. Another one that I hate is like 3 queues in one that all end up in the exact same spot, and that's in Tomorrowland. So the Astro Orbiter, the People Mover, and believe it or not, the Space Mountain Overflow all come to that big chunk in the middle of the park on the concrete directly in the sun. That sucks.
So I wouldn't have thought about lumping Space Mountain in there, but if
Because
I was
it's the same real estate.
if I was to give the most dishonorable mention ever is Astro Orbiter. The fact that you wait in a line to get on an elevator that takes 4 people up at a time.
It's horrible.
It is horrible.
It is.
And then are you in that line, or are you in the line for the People Mover? Which line are you in? It is an absolutely atrocious queue. I hate it. I'm with you 100%.
And then the last one that's directly in the sun is the queue for Rock and Roller Coaster. There's a small chunk at the end that isn't, but you're waiting outside in the sun for so long. And
Tower of Terror can be like that too.
There's at least you're in kind of within trees though. For
Yeah.
that first where we wrap around.
Yeah, you're right.
So you're not directly baking in the sun. Like the second half, when you go inside for Tower of Terror, that's pretty cool. Like when you go inside for Rock and Roller Coaster, it's like a cheesy 1990 rock video. It's very dated. Like if you're a rock and roll fan and you walk in and see all that stuff, you're like, whoa, this is not.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a weird era. It was like right between when like hair metal and glam was over and right before grunge. It was like this weird like pop rock that only existed for a couple of years with Aerosmith. That's where they fit in. And then immediately it was like dated after that point.
Yeah. Aerosmith made a choice.
Yeah.
and the choice they made was not necessarily the right one. But I can't argue with any of the things you said. I will say that there are some rides that don't even have queues. So like we've got the whole Aladdin's Magic Carpets, which I hate that ride. I hate spinner rides in general.
Yeah.
That's kind of a silly one there. But this was a really hard episode to make because
there's a lot.
There are a lot of ride queues that I really like.
Yep.
And I think that's one thing that Disney does so well. Maybe that's why we call them queues there, not lines, because you really don't feel like you're...
Because it's an experience.
Yeah, it really is an experience. And I really enjoy most of them. Some of them can be a bit hot.
Yeah.
Some of them need some love. Looking at you, Runaway Railway.
Yeah. The ripped walls.
Yeah, but you know, they do a good job. The pre-shows are a good way to distract you, make you feel like you're already on the ride when you're not. So,
And they can gobble people up.
yes, they do.
Yeah.
They really can. But
Any last thoughts?
oh, I did want to say.
Yeah.
So because you brought up the Rock and Roller Coaster,
Sure.
I tweeted like a reply to somebody who had asked something about Rock and Roller Coaster, and I said, hey, we were talking on our podcast the other day, and we said it should become like a Muppets ride.
Yeah.
And that the response, people were like, oh my gosh, this would be amazing.
The
So-
Electric Mayhem take it over.
Yeah, you're welcome, Walt Disney Imagineering.
Use it.
Please. But it's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, and tomorrow is just a list away.
Tune in next time, and we'll see you real soon.